Here's how one opinion piece in the New York Times put it by Brett Stevens. Before the word resignation became a euphemism for being fired, it connotated a sense of public integrity and personal honor. Assuming Mike Pompeo and John Bolton still have their own senses intact, they too should resign following the epic disgrace of the U.S.-Russia summit in Helsinki on Monday. So should their senior staff.
Trump's FBI director.
There have also been stories that you threatened to resign. Have you ever hit a point on that issue of sources and methods or anywhere else where you said, this is a line?
You know, as I said, I'm a low-key, understated guy, but that should not be mistaken for what my spine is made out of.
So you have...
I'll just leave it at that.
That was the FBI director, Christopher Wray, being asked whether or not he wants to resign and giving quite a curious answer there. Anyway, lots to discuss. Let's bring in our panelists, Kenneth Vecchio, political and legal strategist, and Ellie Jacobs, a Democratic strategist. And Kenneth, I want to start with you. We'll talk about the calls for people to resign in a moment, but let's go back to the fact that Washington, the president wants Putin to come to Washington in the fall at really very close to the midterm elections when we are being told by Trump's team the Russians plan on hacking it. What do you think of that timing? Can you defend it?
Bravo. I think that Donald Trump is doing what's in the best interest of the United States. This is complete lunacy that we've descended into with this notion that, first of all, that Russia is some kind of enemy of ours. We've been out of the Cold War now for over 3 decades, and Russia has been pretty much close to an ally of ours and not an enemy. Certainly we have divergent viewpoints in a lot of different areas. So the president is just an honest guy. He doesn't care about things when it's election season, when it's not election season. And by the way, we don't know anything for certain about whether or not there has indeed definitively been Russian hacking into our computer systems, any bank fraud, any of this criminal activity involved with our elections. We know that there's an indictment handed down. And if we want to be fair and honest to our criminal justice system, we know that an indictment is nothing more than an allegation. So while common sense dictates that Russia has indeed been interfering with our elections for probably over a century and other countries, and while I'll also say that we've been almost definitely interfering with other countries' elections, we don't know for anything about specific facts at this point, and still things are being unraveled.
It's funny you should say that, because Kirstjen Nielsen, the head of the Homeland Security, just this week said she is warning all 50 states that Russia plans on hacking the 2016 election. This is a person on President Trump's team. So it does sound like the Trump administration believes Russia is hacking and did hack.
Well, I mean, the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, said the same thing the other day. You know, when you have the unanimous decision of all intelligence throughout the U.S. government saying that the Russians hacked the election, and we can disagree on whether or not it had a material impact on the election, but there's no question that they attempted to have a material impact on the election. You know, Ken and I are going to have just a disagreement on facts here.
I don't know how. I don't know where facts come into play anywhere here, because you, me, and probably the President of the United States himself doesn't know for a fact that anything has occurred, because there's been no convictions of anybody at this point.
Here's the fact, and this gets to the whole idea about why certain people should resign. We know that Bolton, the National Security Advisor, we know that Mike Pompeo, a year ago, they were talking openly about the United States should not be engaging with Russia. Bolton wrote an op-ed who described Russia as the enemy, who said that they have attacked the United States. For them to sit there and continue to be part of this White House when the president takes a completely different point of view, shouldn't they resign?
No. So he changed his mind. More facts have come out. I think
we don't know that Bolton's changed his mind. We know that Donald Trump has had his policy view, and Bolton is just going along with it. But that seems to be the question: is shouldn't Bolton come out publicly and explain whether he's changed his mind or not?
I don't think that any two people in any government relationship agree on everything. But I think it's very, very important for us to really, truly take that giant step back and start looking at this for what it really is. When you have people out there that, onto the far left, that are claiming that this is like an act of war against us, the same thing as bombs being dropped, that's getting pretty dangerous. We're not even close to that. No, and I don't think that Bolton should resign. I don't think that he necessarily has to explain himself about how his mind has maybe shifted a little bit. bit.
And Ellie, to Ken's point, if you go all the way back, say, to Harry Truman, there was a Secretary of State who adamantly opposed the United States recognizing Israel as a nation. Harry Truman said, nope, I'm going to support it. And that Secretary of State decided, okay, he's the president, I'm going to stay. So isn't there a model for you may have your own views, but you let the commander-in-chief ultimately decide what he's going to do?
Well, I would hope anybody that's taken the oath to the Constitution will do whatever the commander-in-chief is asking of them. But the reality is that none of these guys are going to resign, because there's basically three kinds of people in this Trump administration that he calls the best of people. There are the grifters, there are the people who are the true believers, and then there are the people who who have a hero complex. There are the hero complex are folks like General Mattis, Secretary Mattis, General Kelly, Secretary Haley, who think that they are all that stands between Trump and essentially the apocalypse. There are the grifters, who are essentially people who are unemployable anywhere else, who are parts of this cabinet.
You want to name one of those?
I mean, we can start with, Wilbur Ross isn't really a grifter, but he has many other things he could be doing, but clearly he's staying in the cabinet because he thinks it's beneficial to himself. And then there are the true believers. People like Scott Pruitt, who's no longer a member of the cabinet. People like Ryan Zinke, people like Jeff Sessions. So that's really where you put these three groups in. And, you know, Brett Stevens, for whatever he may be worth, he lives in some sort of dream world.
Well, he's an op-ed writer that you can. But I want to ask you this, Kenneth. It's not only people in the far left that are hysterical. Republican leadership this week was pretty hysterical, too. So this is not all just Democrats that are upset about what's going on between Putin and the president.
Look, we need to draw really a crystal clear line in the sand here in this entire topic. If people are committing crimes while interfering with the elections, it's illegal. Line drawn in the sand, people need to be prosecuted. Everything else is a dangerous and frightening slippery slope into an abyss of taking free speech rights away. Now, I love Benjamin Netanyahu, but I have to admit that when Barack Obama purposely tried to interfere with the election in Israel, that he had a legal right to do that. And when hundreds of U.S. senators and congressmen have interfered with elections by influencing, by making social media posts and public statements with other countries, what they're doing is legal too.
But hacking, though, that would be illegal.
Correct. And people should be punished for that. But all we know right now is that an indictment has been handed down against about 12 Russians. That's all we know. And if they know anything else for a fact, well, the public's not going to know it until a conviction has been obtained. And I just think that this entire topic has gone into complete lunacy.
So just to be clear, you have a moral equivalency between what the U.S. does and what Russia does.
Of course. I mean, we have no more rights in any direction to be interfering and influencing elections than other countries do in ours. It stinks for everybody. But we're not that stupid. Do you think that the United States populace read a Facebook post from some Russian hacker and said, oh, my God, now I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton, or now I'm going to vote for Donald Trump? Come on.
But do you think that as the president of the United States, whose interest is protecting the United States, he should be stronger with Putin and say, stop doing it?
I think that what he should say is that anybody who violates our laws in trying to manipulate people's minds via advertising and going on social media will be prosecuted.
One second, Ellie, did we hear that from the president?
And Vladimir, please stop it.
Okay, have we heard that from the president?
I don't think so. I think we've seen every excuse possible under the sun for ways to excuse the Russian president's dealings, whatever he's done. And due respect to Ken, who's certainly a bigger legal scholar than I am, when an unimpeachable prosecutor brings an indictment that is under the utmost scrutiny against 12 Russians, you pretty much know that that's probably lock solid in terms of what he's.
Sorry, I don't believe in. I don't believe in any indictments, and I would defend you to the hilt if somebody indicted you, just like they could indict a ham sandwich.
I want Judge Del Vecchio if I ever get in any trouble. Kenneth Del Vecchio and Ellie Jacobs, thank you both for coming on. Appreciate it. Good to have you.
Still ahead, she was booed by her fellow conservatives for calling out Republican leaders accused of sexual